All right, it's back. We are back going through this book, and you're probably wondering, how do I feel about it? I know last week I was giving myself a C. I was a little bit down on my progress. I am very pleased with the progress I've done this week. I think it is in very good shape. I think it is much better shape than when I released it. Not that I'm super embarrassed about the work that I released, but I have grown a lot as an artist since then. Certainly, all the the decade of helping others has made a big difference. And I learned some of the things that I was weaker at, which is one reason why it's great to join communities, not just work in lonely isolation, right? But to get yourself out there and talk to other artists and interact with them. And, just me going through and doing the work of editing all of those pieces has given me some insight to myself. I could be like, wait a minute, Daniel, what would you tell somebody else in this situation, right? And then I get to apply it to myself and I get to work on it. So, yeah, in general, I am quite pleased. Now, a couple of things did come up. I did find a few more little free money on the ground for me to do. So that was great. So I have my little notes set up and I've been cataloging those. So more and more ideas to potentially go in the fourth book. If they don't explore them in the second and third book, I don't think I do, but I don't really remember the plots of those as well, particularly the third book. I'm realizing I don't remember the third book very much at all. It's really weird. And I'm like, because I keep thinking of things, I'm like, wait a minute, that's in the second book. Well, that's in the second book. So we're gonna get to the third book, probably by the end of this month. I'll be at the third book because my hope was to have at least the first one done by the time I was going to start prepping for the fourth book, and I definitely need to read the second and third one. I'm hoping that it's not going to need as much work as this because I thought they were better, but we'll find out. And I also do think the process is going to go a little bit faster, and we'll see what it goes. If I don't end up getting all of that done by the time I'm outlining my fourth book, I'll probably outline my fourth book at the same time while editing my second and third book, and I think that'll work just fine. That's the way my brain works. I know not everybody could do that, but it's okay for me. Now, that being said, I'm basically done with that developmental editing. I mean, I'm going to just call it now. I feel like the content is pretty much what it is. I am a little bit displeased with the ending. It does stop on a dime, like a dime, and I think I will rewrite that. But what I'm going to do is work on everything else, really polish it up, get it to its final stage, and then I'm going to look at it again, do the whole read, and ask myself, okay, what can I do here to improve it? Because I'm a little bit, I want to say I'm like stuck on it right now, but I'm worried that I'm not in the best frame of mind to tackle that specific problem. So I'm going to put that on hold for now, and I'm going to get into line editing. So here we go, line editing. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull up my little analyzer and do my summary report. Now, you may remember from before that I realized that I actually had a pretty close similarity to Brandon Sanderson. So I'm just going to keep Brandon Sanderson as my little go-to. After all, he is a prolific, successful author. So who am I to who am I to judge? I'd be happily compared to Brandon Sanderson. So let's go ahead and crank up this summary report. It's going to take a minute here. You'll notice, yes, the word count didn't go up. I didn't quite get to 70 yet. I might write a 2,000 word end scene. It's probably not going to be that long, but it does stop on a dime right now for sure. So when you have your AutoCrit score, you can go with the AutoCrit plus the author, and that does kind of the best practices against across the board, or you can go to the author itself. If I go just the author itself, it's going to drop a bit, so it lets me see how I'm more similar to like the average author versus how I'm more similar to Brandon Sanderson. So where it drops a lot is pacing. It gets a lot more weighted, and strong writing. So why strong writing so much? My guess is Brandon Sanderson might use more adverbs than average. So he uses 829. Let's see. If I jump that to the AutoCrit score, let's go down. This is just speculation. Oh, no, 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 that would still be there, but it's going to factor it differently, right? Because it's going to lump in, it's not going to change that count because Brandon Sanderson's count is the count. But I believe that that is a bit high for the genre. Also, I think filler words is a bit high. Passive is also a bit high. So that's just where Brandon Sanderson stands out a little bit. So I don't really mind the fact that I'm closer to average on that. I mean, 96 is like crazy high. I'm like very close to average. I write very cleanly. And then when I drop it to Brandon Sanderson, it drops a lot. So I'm not quite as close. And honestly, I don't want to be like a Brandon Sanderson clone. So being around 86 feels like I'm close enough to be comparable, that people who like his work would get that experience that they're looking for. But again, it's not like I'm trying to become a clone of him. That really wasn't my goal. So it's time to go through piece by piece. And of course, we get asked, what order should you do this? And the first thing that we usually suggest is filler. I know I just talked about filler words, but let's go down to filler words. Yeah, and the reason why filler words we talk about early on is because, well, filler words tend to bog down the text. Now, I don't have a lot of filler words, so doesn't immediately jump out as some problem. In fact, you could say, do I even have enough filler words, or am I writing like so concerned about filler words? I know one thing that was a verbal tick of mine back when I wrote this was the word that. I would put that all the time, and I just deleted almost all of them. I didn't do a find and replace and delete them all. I wasn't quite that foolish, but I did a find for that, and I just went through every that of my book. But what I didn't have was AutoCrit right back then, so I wouldn't have seen any other verbal ticks I have. So let's look and see if I have any other verbal ticks, because even though I don't have a lot of filler words overall, it's still important to know if there are any that have cropped up, because I'm curious. And it looks like seems is it. And that's it. And there's only 8 of them. So not much, but seems is a bit of a weasel word. So I'm going to take a moment right now, and I'm going to go and look through the seams, and I'm going to see whether or not I need to replace some of these seams. So let me do that really quick. All right, I am happy I did eliminate a few. Not very many. I think I eliminated 3. We're gonna find out. It said to eliminate 8 before, so whatever is the difference. Um, I guess it's good to say like 5 now. But yeah, there were a few of them. 4. Okay, so I think I eliminated 4. That's fine. I'm okay with the other 4. This is where you have to, not let it bully you, right? Why do I have that as often as I do? It's because I literally do have hedgy moments where the character's like, I don't know, it seems like this. So they really aren't filler. Now there were a couple of times where it was more or less a filler word, or it was just not the best wording. Um, but there are plenty of times the 14 in there are I'm not really sure, and the character isn't really sure, and it's not like a hedgy sort of thing. They really aren't sure, so I think it's okay. I'm going to declare that good. I'm going to move on from filler words. All right, the next step would be adverbs, and I already established that I don't use an awful lot of adverbs. I got it pounded out of me. Stephen King, The Road to Hell is paved with adverbs and blah, blah, blah. So I'm very cautious about adverbs. So, no, there's not a ton of adverbs within this work. Yeah, you can see I have like half the amount of Brandon Sanderson. However, there definitely are a few that I'm using more unusually than Brandon Sanderson. Now, this is a moment where I know we often say don't switch who you're comparing to, but I'm going to switch who I'm comparing to just for a moment. And that's because Brandon Sanderson is not really a young adult author. I mean, he isn't. I'm going to switch to Suzanne Collins, who is a young adult author, and whose work, The Hunger Games, was influential in me creating this piece, although it's a lot bleaker. But I'm going to see whether or not in that genre there might be more adverbs, because I think that because of the audience specifically in this case, there's going to be a bit. Oh, okay. So there, nope, still not very many. Um, Less than Brandon Sanderson. So this is interesting. But what I want to know is, I have to think. Do I want to reach Suzanne Collins' number, or am I happy with being rather adverb free? Am I overdoing it? And I also have some adverbs that I use a lot. I use probably a lot. You might notice that's actually a verbal tick of mine. I actually use the word probably a lot in general, more than the average person. So that's kind of a Danielism. Do I want to go through the probablys? I think I do because I don't want my verbal tick to come in. So that one really stands out because, there's 8 too many. The thankfully 15 too many. Some of these are pretty high. When you think about like 7 or 6 over the course of an entire book, that's not too troubling to me because that's not that noticeable, right? Thankfully though is rather high as well. So I'm going to look at thankfully and probably just to see whether or not, cuz I may switch out for another adverb. Just because I'm getting rid of them doesn't mean I have to get rid of the adverb, right? I actually think that what I might want to do is adjust some of the adverbs I use for different adverbs because maybe I'm just not thinking outside the box. That's a lot of thankfullys in one book, right? There's gratefully and luckily and all kinds of other lees that could work for that. So I'm going to take a quick moment through the thankfullys and see what I come up with here. And right off the back, I have thankfully, that's a few months away. I'm going to go with fortunately because it actually fits better. It's not really, I mean, they are thankful about it, but it's fortunate is a more precise term for this. So fortunately, will work better. And here's another example. Thankfully, there aren't any major roads. This really is luckily because, again, that's what the character is thinking. You could say fortunately again, but I like luckily because, yeah, it feels lucky that they don't have to worry about that. So I'm going to get a little more specific here. All right, so I went through the thankfuls, and now let's see what it is. It's like a telethon. Run that number. Ba-da, ba-da. Let's see what happens. Now it says 9. I'm okay with 9. That's not so bad, right? I'm going to go through some of these other ones, like the probablys, quickly, clearly, usually. I think once we get to about 5, that doesn't bother me so much. I'll look at some of these. I'm going to look at it more when I get to things like the phrase frequency report and repetition, because that's going to be my concern more than that. I certainly don't have an overuse of adverbs in general, right? That is not something for me to be concerned with. If anything, you could say, Daniel, you could use more adverbs and get more specific. And I think that's probably true. Yeah, probably. See, I told you I use that a lot. So anyway, I'm going to look at my probablys because you're probably annoyed by now, and we'll see what happens. Nice. It is gone. It is off the board. Yeah. 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 I mean, I could go through each one of these and really verify all of these where they're a little bit unusual. Here's the thing, when there's something where it's like 1 or 2, all that means is that Susan Collins just didn't use those words, right? And maybe she didn't have a reason to use these words as often, quickly or clearly. It says I use quickly a lot. I'm trying to think if there's another good word that I could use for quickly. So let me just see. She quickly, because I could do like briskly or something like that. Let me pull up promptly, speedily, rapidly, swiftly. Yeah, I mean, none of those are feeling like the mood. Because see, here's the thing with synonyms, right? They're not an exact match, right? They mean something different. Quickly is fine. Swiftly sounds more elegant than I want. Speedily doesn't sound quite right. Because I'm almost tempted to say instead of she quickly turns to just say she snaps back at me and then remove the adjective altogether, which I think I'm actually going to do. But that is not going to solve my adverb problem. See, this is how I get in this mess. I'm like, get rid of the adverb, make a stronger verb. And then I end up with no adverbs at all in my work. So I'm just going to continue to go down this rabbit hole. But I'll look at some of these and then I'm going to move on to the next step not too long from now because as much as that 470 isn't 0, I don't want 0 adverbs in my book. I'm okay with some adverbs. Adverbs are not the devil. So I'm okay. It's like step away from adverb deletion, Daniel. But yes, so this is part of the process, and it's worth looking at again to make sure I'm not repeating myself too much. I sound like I'm repeating myself, sounding about repeating myself, but that's really my biggest concern here. All right, so the next step is generic descriptions. Generic descriptions, of course, are not particularly helpful because they're generic. They don't get into a lot of great detail about what you're referring to. And Brandon Sanderson, in general, uses more of the words that we consider generic descriptions than I do. However, there were some words that come up a fair amount. Look and looks are the big nat ones, and I'll be honest, that is a common early author problem, and I believe it was in this that there are lots of different ways to look at something, and I think I probably overused just generic look. So I'm going to look at that. But I also have maybe. That's interesting. Big is another one. Beyond that, I'm not that concerned. And you can see in general, I did a good job. Speaking of generic descriptions, good. I did an adequate job. See, going to get more specific. I did a reasonably well, a proficient job at making sure that I didn't have too many generic descriptions. And so, yeah, look, I'm going to take a look at look because I have 28 more than I should for this work. I'm going to probably be pretty brutal here and try to cram all of them out, all 28 of them, because I really do think I overuse it. Let's take a look and see if I'm right. Yep, so look to hire, I'm going to change to seeking to hire. That's more specific, makes more sense. It's dialogue. I think that's okay. Mr. Browns gives me that look. That's fine. Yeah, instead of I look at my scanners, I need something else here. I pay attention to my scanners is better. Look at them and it's fine. That's necessary. Instead of look like, I'm going to say resemble. Woo! Down to 6. All right, that's not so bad. So now we're going to look at maybe and big. I bet maybe is mostly in dialogue. Now, something I'm going to do, I haven't been doing this so much. I'm going to highlight this little dialogue thing, the highlight dialogue button, and that's going to put all the dialogue in gray. I haven't been doing that so much because I actually care a lot whether or not some of these this usage of words is in dialogue. I understand dialogue can be a lot more cash or whatever, but I want my dialogue to sound similar to my prose in this setting because the prose is quite conversational in this book. So it should be similar. There shouldn't be some dramatic shift. There will be some more filler words and things like that in dialogue, but not excessively so. So I'm going to see if maybe is in the dialogue. Maybe it is. We're going to find out. All right, maybe is gone. Woo! So the only thing left is big. Let's take a look at big. Hmm. All right, I'm finding this quite rewarding, honestly. Like the bigs, there were a lot of bigs that weren't great. It really was a generic word that was not giving as much meaning as it should be. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cram through. I know that in general I'm still a lot lower than Brandon Sanderson, but I'm finding a lot of value in this, and there's not too many other words to go through. So I'm just going to go ahead and go through these other ones really quick as I'm enjoying how this is. I'm enjoying how this is polishing up the work. All right. So now I'm at the point where I have gone through my generic descriptions. I'm down down to 276, which is a lot less. I am curious though. I haven't looked at my summary score in a bit. I'm guessing it's going to be less now. I'm assuming I'm further away from Brandon Sanderson with some of these choices. I know that I wasn't exactly looking out to make it more similar exactly. I'm curious. I'm curious because I have a lot less indicators, but then I have less examples of the specific word. So let's find out. Let's find out where that score ended up. It was in 86 something before. So let's see where it's at now. 85. Yeah, I believe it dropped a little bit. Um, I'll have to double check the tape, or you can rewind and tell me because I don't remember. But I think it dropped. It's not too different though, because I haven't done too much just yet. All right, so the next thing I'm going to look for is repetition. So the first thing I'm going to try to stamp out are maybe some phrases I say a lot. We're going to look at other things like word frequency, and then I'm eventually going to drop down to repeated words. But the first thing I want to see is the phrase frequency. Now, in general, the repetition score that I got was not incredibly high. And of course, whenever you write, you expect a fair amount of repetition as you build on concepts and things like that. Obviously, not all repetition is bad. And some, I know that there is at least a couple of catchphrases in this book that are intentional. I wonder why sometimes I'm friends with him is kind of a running joke throughout. I'm not sure if I stated in the exact same wording each time, but we're going to find out because if it is, then I would see that. All right, let's take a look at this. I only have sometimes I wonder why I'm friends with him 3 times. So it actually doesn't show up in this report. So there we go. But we do have shakes his head 3 times. Some sort of, I wonder if gives me a, none of these are really dropping out as like very noticeable things that I would be worried about. I'm going to look at the shakes his head because, yeah, we have a lot. I'm going to take a look at all of these shaking the heads because there's 23 of them. Shaking your head is a pretty good indication that something's bad, but I might double check and see whether or not I might come up with something else. So ultimately, I do think that going through and fixing the shaking the heads, uh, there was a lot of shaking heads. I see more of the I shake my, so I'm gonna go through those as well. And I do think this has been really beneficial. So when it comes to the word frequency report, I'm assuming a lot of these words are going to be ones specific to the plot, and so therefore are going to be up a lot more asks. Obviously, a lot of people asking something, Mr. Rose. Rose is a character name, which actually I'll go ahead and put into the exclude list because I don't need Rose to keep coming up here. So let's go ahead and do that and rerun that. Government I saw was there a lot, yeah, because people talk about the government a lot in this because the government's important. Wings, some characters have wings. Abilities, the whole plot is about abilities. I didn't see anything on that initial list that looked that alarming. It looked like it all made sense and what I would expect. Powers, class, elevation, reach, starts, hallway scan, pulls, shakes, bait. Yeah, all of these uh yeah, makes a lot of sense. I'm really not worried about these things. Apparently, I have people laugh a lot more than Brandon Sanderson, but that's fine. Exit notice, miss stupid expression. Yeah, a lot of this is just a word choice thing. I'm not seeing anything on there that stands out as a weird word that I'm repeating a lot. That doesn't make a lot of sense. So I think I'm good on that. And overall, I don't think my repetition is that poor. Yep. So overall, yeah, looking good. Again, where I tend to differ from Brandon Sanderson is in some of that word choice stuff. But overall, 85.8. Obviously, it's quite readable. I think it's in really good shape. I think we're talking about some final polishes, and I will be ready to upload and change it out and release my final version. And then I'll be looking at book 2 and book 3. That's actually probably going to be some of the fun of next episode. Tune in next time. I'll be doing my initial read of book 2, which I didn't remember nearly as much. Eventually, I'll get to book 3, which, like I said, barely remember at all. But book 2, there's certain things about it I remember that I really loved. I remember the main plot being something I thought was really fun to put out. So I'm really looking forward to getting back into that. I certainly hope again that you're enjoying the series. Please like and subscribe, hit the bell, all the things, so you can hear about more in the future. And yeah, thank you so much for being part of this journey. I'll see you around.